Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. Peace and blessings upon Prophet Muhammad, his family and companions. So, I was thinking about when I was younger, what caused someone like me to join a gang. And I was just looking in the past, seeing what could have been different, and how Islam can help a lot of young, lost youth to change their life and to keep on going even when they feel there's no point in going on any further. Because there's so much abuse being hurled at a lot of lost women. Okay? And when you have monsters like Pearly Things, who rejects traditionality for herself and was born into wealth and is wealthy, and she's just helping men to walk away from marriage and making women feel like they can never change, well, I think it's important to critique her, but also offer a counter narrative to her agenda and her philosophy and her mission. So I thought about all the times that I could have rejected that lifestyle. And a lot of women, when they're younger, right? If you live in certain areas, you need to have protection. And instead of blaming moms for sticking around and raising their kids and enduring poverty, I think it's very important to highlight how many fathers went and chased skirts and didn't give a damn about their kids. Deadbeat dads are more common than we realize. They didn't stay and suffer and endure. They went and got a new tight fit. And some of the women they get pregnant, they're just on their rotation and they had no desire to stay with those women. And the pregnancy was an accident and they're not going to put a ring on it. They're not going to participate in a shotgun wedding. They're going to dip out and maybe visit the baby once a week, and then once every 2 weeks, and then once every 3. And before you know it, time is going by and the woman is on welfare and living in the slums and having a hard time. So there isn't a very strong male presence, and the dysfunctionality ripples down. And so when I was younger, being known as a child of a sex worker and a womanizer, let's put it that way, father, right? This was a stigma, and I really grew a thick skin, but we were also poor when I was living with my grandparents. So that was also difficult to deal with as well, because not only is there a stigma about who my parents were, I also was poor and didn't have nice things, and so people separate into social groups naturally. So public schools operate a lot like a prison psychologically for so many people, and maybe some schools aren't that way, but you gotta find a group there to survive. Okay? And we in the 90s were bombarded with all kinds of strange, another teen movie they called it, or very strange hedonistic high school films where the football quarterback was doing sleazy things with the cheerleader and the Mean Girls time and all that. So there was so much going on during that time. Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. It was a very strange time period for fatherless women and motherless women, right? Because we didn't have a proper role model. And joining gangs, when you see the strength of the criminals, right? Some of them are heavily tatted, and you notice the pecking order. You learn to navigate the expectations of the group. You see brutality. You learn how to speak to somebody, and you learn that what you say can literally end your life the next day. And you better say what you mean and stick by it, because if you're wishy-washy, you're going to be punished for that too. And so it's necessary for some, they feel, to have some type of fear attached to them. So there were students who, young people, right, their family has money, so you know they're going to use the book at you, right? There are people who had siblings. There are people who were very well loved at school, very popular, they had social clout. Others had to have fear. So you had to choose between being loved and feared. And if you're not some socialite, the fear angle is much more appeasing and easier to master, right? So, and it's also more potent sometimes because people know they'll mess around and find out. And the deeper you go to prove yourself to the group, the more of you is peeled away in terms of not fearing stuff. And this leads you to become someone who feels very strong and vigorous in their nature. Now, for women in those types of climates during that time, you had a choice to be kind of more of a soldada, they called it. So, a bit of the more willing to fight, stuff like that. And then you had the hyenas. So those were women who would sleep with the members, and they were just there to be passed around. And the people who I'm still friends with till this day, although they've all grown up and matured, such as myself, right? They were more of the soldada type like me. Now, what's fascinating is in gangs, you don't see them trash women for being more masculine, because you do see more tomboyish beauties who are still beautiful and have sex appeal, but they are more cold. And you'd be very surprised how quickly they would put a man in the dirt, because they get hardened due to the violence they see. And if you're soft and cute and butterfly-like and a Barbie doll amongst wolves, it's only going to be a matter of time before one of those men does something to you really horribly, because they don't respect beauty. They're not going to stand and stare at you. They're going to extract your energy, dominate you, put you in your place, and break you. So if they see a woman who's too feeble and soft, they're going to use her until she can't be used anymore, and she probably will end up being addicted to drugs and have a bunch of trauma. Whereas the women who hold the line, maybe have taken a beating, have proven themselves to be down to ride, are competent, and not hypersexual and more stoic, they'll be treated a lot differently. And so the incentivization of strength in women is different in those groups. So if one of the hyenas, one of the looser type of girls, asks for help from the group of men for protection, most of the time those men aren't going to do it, because that girl is just to be chewed up and spit out. But the one who's the more tougher one in the group, who will fight other women for men, well, they'll get help, because those men know that since those women are not being sexual kitty cats, sex icons, that when that woman says, hey, I have a problem with so-and-so, those men are like, okay, she's serious. And so that was appeasing to someone like me, because if you know you don't have older brothers, your cousins the male cousins aren't about that life. They're not gonna really help you. They live in a different city. You know, they're just only thinking about themselves. You're not really close with them. You have to figure out your plan to survive pretty quickly, right? And so that's something that made me join. And once you get to see certain levels of male consciousness, you just feel safer under the dragon's wing. And some of those men were like just tatted on their stomach, their head, and you look in their eyes and you find out what they went to prison for, and some of them are old, and some of them sadly are on drugs. But you learn a totally different type of respect order, okay? Because those people who are in prison or in jail, and they did hard time, and they're out now training the peewees, you can't just speak to them any type of way. And so they almost become your father figure, and they become your grandfathers. They are your new family, essentially. And in order to be part of that family, you have to be willing to do things in terms of being on call when it's needed and putting your life on for the group. And you can't back down from violence. So this trains you over time, and you begin to get used to that. So someone who, like if I was trying to help a young woman to get out of that lifestyle and convince her that getting a more stoic, middle-class working man who is law-abiding, works a 9 to 5, whatever, if I'm electrician, you name it, a butcher, and if I'm trying to convince her, like, hey, convert to Islam, come to a different life, I can't do it the way Pearly Things and Fresh and Fit and the Whatever podcast does. Because these women have a shell over their heart, and they've probably seen people get their faces slashed. They've put in work for the group. They are a different breed of woman. And so if you're going to persuade them to take a more traditional life, you cannot doom these women to never being good enough, right? We should praise these young ones for having the willingness to enter onto a new leaf, to start a new chapter in their life. And so when you see these young Muslim red pill men who really enjoy trashing sisters for views, especially reverts, I mean, there's UK Muslims who seem to enjoy red pill manosphere influencers who mock sisters for having dysfunctional families, not being virgins, just really railing on them. And no one is telling the young men who still live with their parents, don't have money, don't own land, have no real capital. No one is telling them to take these women on as second, third, or fourth wives. However, you can change the next generation by convincing these women that it's never too late to change and that they should start today. That the door is always open for them. So when you're trying to tell a woman who's grown up around hardened felons, not these fake red pill men who still secretly break so many rules of Islam and don't even know how to aim properly or load a Glock, stuff like that. They're just all talk and no real action. Those men mocking women who've navigated around actual killers, those aren't going to be persuaded by that, and actually you're going to harden their heart. For a whiny 15, 16-year-old who still has their mom cook for them to just spam these women on their social media about how they have to wear a burqa and live in a closet, delete their social media, and be Cinderella for them, these women are going to be like, what are you talking about? I would literally watch someone kill you. So you have to realize, who are you talking to, and what's the best path to get these young ones to change before they turn 21, 22. Now, the feminists are offering them college, money, status, career, and the ability to how would you put it? The ability to climb the money ladder. As an American Reaver, I have to convince these hardened women to say, hey, you know, try enjoying living a more peaceful lifestyle at home, being a homemaker, and praying and being with your children in a peaceful, stable environment while sober. And cutting off all that group you had, right? And then showing them how you can still have strength. You don't have to rip out your teeth in order to be the perfect ideal woman for some shithead red pill guy, right? And so I feel quite empathetic to a lot of women, because they didn't have, even if they had a father figure, their father may have been just a piece of trash. Okay? A man who is a womanizer or really career oriented, he's not around as much to give that really table talk with his daughter a lot. And some men don't even think to do it. They just think, oh, the mom might do it, so why should I? And a lot of the lack of helping the mom to change diapers and not seeing them be kind to one another, hugging, this also can make the young woman see, men are really not that capable of compassion and empathy. Therefore, I have to be more hard in my heart to survive. And that type of hardness of the heart and mistrust makes it hard for them to think that they should ever cooperate as much as possible with a soft submission to a man, because they've only seen examples of nightmarish men. And so when you have these red pill UK influencers who are making masculine Islam seem like it's all about destroying the mind and soul and capabilities, everything of the woman, this is worse than what they have, right? This is worse than what they have. This is what they see. And when they see these horrific red pill manosphere guys call kindness to your wife simping, or they hear men going their own way, this puts them into panic and survival mode, to where, okay, we have to make money and we have to branch out, right? Because they have to operate with what they know and what they have access to. And so if someone like me wants to help these women to change, you have to convince them of the beauty of motherhood and then calm their hearts when it comes to men, because they may have never seen a good man, and these red pill Muslim men are not good men. They are playboys just as well, with a facade of Islam, can't do takfir, but temporary marriages, hookup apps essentially, muta or no strings nikah. These women are smarter than that and say, look, how are you going to submit to a guy, a Muslim man, and he can just sleep with you and leave you in a month? He's not going to provide, or he'll be so controlling and domineering that I'll just think about deleting myself all the time and be in hardcore isolation with women who are stuck up and they're born Muslims, right? So it's very difficult for them to see Islam as something liberating. They see it only as something oppressive, isolating, and just a long list of everything is haram. And a lot of spam nagging from angsty, unmarried, childless young men who live with their parents, right? And so it's important to remember that you have to show them a way out, and you have to lead by example. And that's what I try to do. I really try to show them, hey, you can learn to love to cook. Here's something I made. Maybe you could try it or try something similar, but either way, keep going on your educational and culinary journeys, and each day counts, and don't let people hold you down. And it's also important for these women to know that you don't join Islam for the community, because Muslims online are very fickle, right? They'll give tons of attention to someone who does a fake reaction video who's not even Muslim, but they'll neglect, people who are actually studying and making change and leading by example. So there's a lot of strange hypocrisy. And so Muslims love to do takfir and cancel each other. So you can't leave the gang life and then join Islam and think that you're going to have this supportive community who's going to always be there for you. No, Muslims abandon each other all the time. So you just can't think that you're going to have some ability to pass all their purity tests, and it's just a nightmare. And that'll also cause them to leave Islam and then go back to their old ways. And so when we talk to these young women, it's helpful for us to realize they can learn about Tawheed, how only fearing Allah, trusting Allah, and obeying Allah. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes before the husband, and that you love Allah, you fear Allah, you have hope in Allah, and you don't despair in Allah. And so I look back and I realize there are some female minds that are not dainty, feeble, and as dumb as a drunk donkey. There are women who are capable, and Islam does appeal to them. They just need to have the right women to show them how, right? And so I think it's very important for the Muslim community, especially in America, to ask themselves, how do we stop the start of gang initiations? How do we prevent these youths from entering into those social contracts? How do we get them out? Okay? The biggest point is to argue against the ideas of red pill, both from a female perspective and a male perspective, and show them the beauty of Islam, and to have them know that it's not too late to change. You have to change, and you have to put your best foot forward. I understand why I joined when I was younger, real young, at 12 years old, and so I always have a soft spot for stronger women who are just aching for a mom figure and a dad figure, right? Or some type of positive role model. And so keep that mercy in your heart, because those women survive a lot, and they're in some pretty gnarly situations. And so guide them to the proper influencers, the proper texts, the proper shares, and focus on rehabilitation, not condemnation and mockery. And young unmarried teen red pill Muslim men are the worst to give advice to those women, because a woman should never take advice on relationships and Islam from somebody who is not even really a full man yet, right? They haven't seen the birth of a child, they haven't owned any property, they don't have anything in their bank account. They're just not at that level yet. And so it's very important to guide these women towards seasoned elder sheikhs and the ulama, the scholars of Islam, because those men are so mature and so honest and decent, that it will actually make those women have hope that there are good men, right? I really think that could be quite helpful. I really do. And we're at the cuspis of that in America, at least. Because gang activity is quite high. In Mexico, you got cartels, and America shares a border with Mexico and shares a culture with Mexico as well, right? And South America has Mara Salvatrucha, 18th Street, you name it, all these mini factions. And so the gang activity and the cartel activity is here to stay. It's going to be very difficult to combat. But I think about what caused me to join. It was security, safety, strength, a scarecrow of stepfathers, and thinking that was masculinity. And so it's very important to guide those women to the healthy examples and to not have gangish red pill Muslim UK guys muddy the waters, because they're just increasing women's body counts with no strings marriages and rotating those women and having those women right away their rights, and there's so much corruption, right? It's not very helpful for women to reform when they see that red pill Muslims love a former pimp and pornographer. It's very difficult for them to feel safe, like they want to build a family with those men. So it's very important we guide them to proper male role models, even if the young red pill Muslim men hate those models. Okay? So have some mercy and empathy, and think about what it would have been like if you had been in their shoes. And your daughter could easily end up that way if you die. So we have to remember that. May Allah protect our children from that. But right, if Andrew Tate was able to get women to do sex work who never have, there's other people out there who took his pimp courses and his hustle university who want to do that to your daughter. So you have to remember, there are men right now who are hunting your daughter. Okay? And so understand that American reverts have a lot of wisdom to partake. They have a lot of wisdom to partake because they've faced different kinds of obstacles. We've all faced different obstacles depending on where we were born. Malaysians have their own techniques, Algerians, Egyptians, Moroccans, Chinese, Japanese, you name it. Each one of them has faced some sort of cultural obstacle. And so for American Muslim reverts, especially females who grew up around poverty and violence, they've had to overcome quite a lot, and they should be respected for their efforts. And we shouldn't doom them, and we shouldn't use Pearly Things' method of degrading women in order to make them feel somehow that traditionality is better. You can't throw mud in someone's face and then expect them to kiss your hand. And this is a very important aspect of reformation, rehabilitation, and atonement as well. So let me know what you think. If it made you think of someone you know in your community, and how you can create solutions in your local area where you are or online. By the way, if you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.